Good morning, hello, good afternoon. It is Saturday, and of course, I'm at my local dive bar working hard. I'm starting this video off slightly differently. What I'm doing is, you can see where I've got the stippling along the sides here. I want to see if that's enough, or whether I don't want to have to stipple this middle area, but I can't just, because right now we see the holding line, so I need to do some erasing here. See if, how does this turn out without the holding line? Does the stippling along the edges hold up? Because that's the big deal. You got to be the stippling has to create the image enough that you don't need the holding line when you're working this small. So I normally wait until I'm done with a complete image before I do some erasing, but in this instance I want to do some erasing now, so that way I can see how far I need to go with the with the stippling. So I'm looking right now, and right now so far it looks pretty good. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to add some tone like here, and definitely to add some tone like in here. So all I'm doing is just adding a little bit of tone, okay? And you take a look how I'm doing it. It gives him much more of a battle-weathered type of facial expression. Kind of makes him all kind of bumpy and not as attractive. Plus, also you gotta keep in mind, I've got this like bump in here where I don't have the bump at all. And here I got slightly there, so maybe I should add a little bit more up here. Just maybe put in something to pull this in. So that way he's got a continuation of his facial structure. Maybe what we'll do is we'll add some up here, maybe add some tone. Yeah, just adds a little bit more tone up here, so that way there's still a level of consistency between this image and this one down here. So we'll do that. It looks good. This week, instead of watching Kings, I was watching Shae, Red Valkyrie, and I enjoyed it. It was just really just her. It was a small show. But I got the bug, and I just started creating my own image, or creating my own drawing separate from everything else I'm working on. And what I ended up doing was I was doing Zuckuss, the bounty hunter from Star Wars. And I just threw in the chat because I think you'd be interested in Zuckuss. And she's like, yeah. And she actually encouraged me. I was like, get Orrin, do something up and get her on the art auction. So I might just do that. I've got Zuckuss done. I'm going to tweak it up a little so it looks better. The one thing I did do, because I was at my computer station at home, and so I just used, instead of like going out, running downstairs and getting all my art supplies out, I just used a disposable Rapidio pen. And so I was like, once I erase all the lines, it's one of those where it's like, for me, because I work with dip pen and you get a variety of dot, whereas with Rapidio, it's sterile, it's all uniform. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with some dip pen and jazz it up in some areas, so that way it has a much more of a finished look to it, much more of an impactful bang to it. So now that I've done that one, I'm thinking I'm going to do another one. I have a choice. I can either do like El Forlam, who is also the bounty hunter, or what I might do is I think I might do Valance. Remember, Valance is the bounty hunter created by Walt Simonson, and he was a bounty hunter, and here it turned out the reason why he hated droids so much is he was a cyborg himself. So I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to do that one. I started doing some work on it last night, but for me to do him, and I'm doing these at like trading card size, is you gotta have the hands. Remember, he had the hand before we knew he was a cyborg. He was able to point his hand and a blaster bolt would come out of his hand. And it was at the end of the episode we realized the reason why he was able to do that blaster bolt is because of his cybernetic implants. So I'm thinking you got to include the hand in the image. So I'm having issues with it's a very small image area, and to draw him with the hand doesn't look natural. It looks disconnected from the face and the body because of the small image area. So I'm going to rework that. I might have to make his face smaller, or make the image area larger. I think what I might actually even do is take a picture of myself with my hand, really in your face, so that way I can really get the proportions correct. The hand of him his face is somewhat in the background with it. You can definitely tell that it's his hand that's coming at you. So I'm going to work on that. So I think, and the reason why I'm doing baseball trading card size is because I can do that relatively quickly. And you gotta keep in mind, if I go in Shae's auction, this will be the first time I'll be on her auction. So I know that the bidding will be low. So I want to be able to put something out so that way if it sells low, I'm not bummed, and I was man, I put all this work into it, I'm only making this much. Because doing this is very labor intensive, as you can see. I think I'm working on video number 3 of this guy's face, and while I'm enjoying it, you can see how it takes quite a bit of time, as opposed to how even if I was an artist who's does very linear work, and let's say they do a lot of very light cross hatching, okay, it's still using very linear cross hatching technique is still going to be faster to produce than how I'm doing it with the stippling. So, oh gosh, I'm sorry guys, I didn't realize I was off the image area. I apologize. So it's the one bad thing when you have the camera angled the way it is, because I'm literally right over the side to the right of the camera, and so I can see it. It ends up drifting off of the image area side. So I apologize for that, guys. And with doing the image of Zilkus, I was thinking about how when Marvel had the original Star Wars run, when they had the license for the original run in the 70s and the 80s, how they were able to tell such good stories and really create great characters that were good for the comics, that didn't matter whether they were ever showed up in the movies. They were actually almost never intended to be in the movies. They were substitutes for other characters. You think about how when Star Wars became really big, and even before, between the first and the second one, you never really could have Luke going up against Darth Vader. That was I remember when I talked to Louise about her run on it, and how they had such difficulties because they're restricted. They couldn't do Han because at the end of Empire Strikes Back he was in carbonite. You couldn't have Luke facing off against Vader directly because of the movies, and how Lucas was specific. You can't do that. And you look at how what they did was they created stand-ins for the characters they couldn't. When in the comics they couldn't have Han Solo, but remember, that's when they introduced Danny, that Zeltron. They introduced the Zeltron race, and she was partners with a guy by the name of Rick Duel, and he was almost like your Han Solo style stand-in. And how you couldn't have Vader, but prior to that, in the original series, before The Empire Strikes Back, remember, they had Luke fighting Baron Tog, he wore a visor, he had a cape, and Luke would duel against him. And so I always found it how they were able to overcome those obstacles in a very inventive way. And I'm thinking about how we're really missing that these days, and that I don't see the imagination in these licensed properties where they know that, okay, I'm doing Star Trek, and we're going to be doing a comic book or Strange New Worlds or Discovery, but they're not really going in and creating the book as if it's its own, and it needs to stand on its own by utilizing the characters, creating stand-in characters for that way they can, maybe let's say Star Trek Strange New Worlds, okay? They're not going in and trying, okay, well, they're not like creating their own comic race. So, okay, we can't really do anything with the Klingons. Well, what if we create a different race? It's kind of like the Klingons. To get the fans interested, if it comes popular enough that they use it in the TV show, great. But if not, we've got an out. So that way, if we want to investigate this stuff, but we can't use the Klingons because of either Star Trek canon that was established from the Next Generation or Deep Space Nine, we've got this unique alien species that we can then utilize for our stories. And it's really sad because, I mean, I still remember how they did such a good job with Star Wars, Terminator, Aliens, how they had the movie, the demand was high, the enthusiasm was high, but yet they weren't really produced how they would produce standalone stories that were not canon, but they could be canon. And as we all know, Lucas respected that, the work being done by the fans, the work done in the books, the work done in the comics, and how, yeah, it could be. That's all he had to say was it could be in the regular. So that way it gave him an out. So that way if he could still do his own thing, but yet it was still had that breath and feel of Star Wars. And how we don't really get that. And especially with how the properties are being owned by these big corporations. I'm really shocked how they're not looking at, okay, we've got the license out to IDW, we've got 5 seasons of Discovery in it. Hey, let's give IDW, hey, why don't you take your comic book store series and revolve it around this species or that species. It gives them the ability to look at what's being created. They can then decide, okay, we kind of like that with this species that you did, and we don't like this, but the stuff that we do like, we can incorporate into the next season of the TV show. So, and you gotta keep in mind, part of having a comic book, a monthly comic book, is to keep the fans interested until the next season of the TV show, to keep until the next movie. And we're really not seeing that anymore. And I think about how Michael Straczynski, how he had so much respect for the property that he was creating with Babylon 5 that he actually, the books, he would provide, either he'd write them himself or he'd provide detailed plots so someone else could write it, so that way it was canon within the TV series. So it's one of those little, like, here's a story I didn't get to delve into. Why don't you guys do a book? Why don't you guys do a comic book series to delve into this? That way I can then have that information, and I don't have to pull all that information, but maybe the following season just make remarks just enough to tell my story, but yet the fans who read the comic book will be excited because it's there and I read that, or it generates interest to those fans to then go and find those books or those comic books. So really what it comes down to, I think, maybe is we need movie creators that respect and love the comic book medium to give in, to be more involved the way Michael Straczynski is, so we can have successful comics based on these properties. Now, I know we're never going to get that, but it would be so nice if we could. So, yeah, I know this was not a very interesting visually episode. The reason why is because this ink that I'm using is at the very bottom of the well, and so it gums up, and it gums up the nib fast, and as a result it's harder to continually lay down dots without it running out, because the ink is so thick. That's the reason why, believe it or not, old thick ink gives you a much lighter dot than new ink. So a newer ink is going to give you a much more darker, thicker dot, whereas and that's thin ink. Thin ink gives you dots like this. Thick at the bottom of the inkwell, that's where you get these really fine dots, and almost looks like, in some ways it almost looks like, it doesn't look like it was applied by hand, almost it was like slight, like airbrushed on almost, which I do like to do. That's the reason why whenever I always work with Rapidia, I always work with a 102 nib, and I don't use disposable pens. So, but hey, I'm gonna stop working on this. Remember, when I get done with this video, I'm going to be starting my time-lapse video, and you guys remember this one. I think we're at the point, I did this one last week. I think what I'm gonna do is we're gonna work on probably the groundhog, and then probably the groundhog. I'm off camera, I'm going to work on this Route 666 and the covered bridge. The reason why I'm not going to do them as videos because they're not as visually interesting. Plus also, it's in the upper right hand corner of the page, and I've discovered that when I have the camera set up to record this upper page, it's harder for me to see the image because it's farther away from me because I'm working flat. On top of that, also, it's harder for me to reach out because I'm almost on my arm fully extended to do this. So I'm going to work on this guy next, even though he's on the right side page. I think I'm going to work on the ground, Puxatawny Phil. I'll do Puxatawny Phil next. After Puxatawny Phil, I guess what I'm probably going to have to do is I'll probably have to work on the liquor bottle. Or what I might work on is I might work on the, I call her the biker slut fairy, because she's dressed up like a biker slut, holding the butter knife. And of course we all know what she wants to do with that butter knife, because we can see that some of her buddies, they had their demise thanks to a drunk gnome So, but just a little something I'm working on. So I'll be working on that. So make sure you check out my stippling shorts. I enjoy working on them a lot. So until I talk to you guys tomorrow, have a great day. And remember, life is always going to be stressful. And that's why you take it all one dot at a time.